All right, welcome everybody. Tonight's edition of the System Basketball ZoomCast is Coach Andrea Bertini of Westfield State. She's come on the system clinics a few times. She did a clinic for me, and I'm great to have her and fired up to ask her some system questions that everybody likes to have answered when they're looking into being a system coach. This is going to be my first year running it the way system purists say it should be ran. So, Coach, when did you start running the system?
We started back in the 15-16 season. So what, 5 years ago now?
So you've done it for 5 years.
Yep.
What was your thought process of why you decided to go to the system? Why did you make the switch?
We had a really good year the year before, had some really good returning players coming back. But I wanted to incorporate more student athletes into the game because I was struggling with only playing 7 or 8 players and the experience being so different for your top 7 players versus your bottom, 3, 4, 5 players. So I wanted to kind of incorporate a style of play that would involve more players, kind of increase the overall experience for everyone. And so that's kind of what really drew me to that. And I also wanted to score more points. I didn't want to have games where it felt like we couldn't get points on the board. And certainly you still have that at times. But there were games that it just was so frustrating to score. And if you got over 60 points, you were thrilled. And I wanted to change kind of our pace of play to score more points and to just have more fun. And so when I kind of stumbled upon this style of play, it just drew me in, and I wanted to read as much about it as I could get my hands on.
So when you were reading and doing your research, what resources or people did you seek out to get advice from?
Doug and Lauren a lot. I've probably talked to Doug the most. When we're struggling or having our challenges, he's like the first person I reach out to, the first email I send, and he's so awesome. He'll get back to you right away, and this is what we've done, and these are the struggles we've had, and he really helped prepare me for not just the ups. Like, he was like, you're gonna lose a game, you are up 15, you're gonna have people doubt you, you're gonna have fans not understand, you're gonna have administrators upset, you're gonna have parents mad, you're gonna he really prepared me not just for the positives but the negatives that come along with it as well.
Okay. What would be your definition of system basketball?
Definitely the subbing, I think, is what makes it unique. I think the subbing 45 seconds to a minute, like, everybody can play fast, but I think utilizing your entire roster and subbing every 45 seconds and then pressing the entire game, as well as trying to get a shot off in those first 10 seconds of every shot clock. Okay. That's how I would kind of, I guess, loosely define it.
Okay. What are your system goals? Do you have the traditional ones, or do you do it a little different?
They're mostly traditional ones, but I think I don't try to mathematically, I guess, figure out a number. I've kind of stumbled on numbers that I think work for us. So 90 field goal attempts. We've gradually grown our number of 3-point attempts. So, like, our first year, I think I had the number at 30, which is probably low comparatively to everybody tries to hit that 50% mark in field goal attempts, being threes. But the way my team was comprised those first couple of years, I had really good post players. So you needed to kind of let those players get shots. And, as we kind of always let the big dogs eat, you got to make sure your post players get some shots. And, we had 3 or 4 really good inside players that needed to get touches in the paint. And so as we've recruited kind of, I guess, more system type players in terms of, smaller, quicker, athletic, and we haven't focused as much on size. Plus, it's been really hard to it's always hard to recruit size no matter what level, right? Every level from biddy ball all the way up to NBA, everybody's looking for good size. So it's hard to recruit that. So our team has kind of gotten smaller and our 3-point attempts have gone up. And then, so I would say now we're kind of closer to that 50%, 40 to 45 3-point attempts is where we want to be at out of our 90 field goals. Then we look for forcing 35 turnovers, getting 20 steals, and then trying to offensive rebound 35% of our misses.
Everybody talks about getting buy-in. Now that you've done it for 5 years, do you find that you're still having to sell it and get the buy-in to your players, reselling it to them each year, or is it pretty much ingrained in your program?
I think it's pretty much ingrained. I mean, there are times certainly that you'll have a couple shifts here and there where the pace of play is really slow. So, there's multiple whistles and, maybe a bunch of free throws or, so what is like, you never get that up and down pace. So there are times that players might be frustrated because they come out after 45 seconds or a minute and it was just a really slow shift for whatever reason. They didn't get any good pace of play going. And, so there's a frustration that sometimes can come with that. But, they understand that once we're accomplishing what we need to accomplish in terms of pace of play, that if you're doing it right, you're going to be exhausted. Like you should be exhausted when you can come out in a minute. So in terms of getting the buy-in, I think, and we've been doing it so long that the recruits that choose our program they know what they're getting into, they know how we play. So it's not really a surprise to them.
Would you have any advice for a high school coach that really doesn't recruit and then they're putting it in and to try to get the buy-in, or to go about that? I know I've heard the PowerPoint thing, and I think I've mentioned this on other Zoomcasts. Like, I would never go do a PowerPoint to my admin or my players to sell the flex offense if I was going to run that. But people tell you to do that when you're a system coach, and because it's so radical. Or do you have any ideas for people that can't root for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that's really radical, right, is the substitutions.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is kind of standard, right? Everybody wants to play fast. Like they tell you, if you ask players, they love pressing and they love playing fast. So, 2/3 of kind of the sell is already done for you because people like to do that. So it's really just the subbing. That's what you have to sell the most, and getting players to understand that, the pace of play should be fast enough that you're exhausted when you come out, no matter how good your conditioning is. I think one of the harder things to sell, though, is players that should be starters come off the bench. I think, making sure that people understand there's really like for us as a starting 10, so when we get to the fourth quarter, we might go top 10, and it's really kind of critical to be in that top 10. So especially when it's in terms of minutes and kind of impact on the game. So like any other way of playing, the best players are still going to play the most. And that's kind of how I always have explained it to my best players. And then for your players that maybe don't play as much, they need to continue to work on their game so that their minutes continue to increase as the season goes on.
What is the biggest misconception of system basketball that you hear?
Geez, that's not real basketball, that it's a gimmick. I mean, I think people feel that, and we've seen it because we have players that, kind of lost out on league awards, whether it be first team or first team all conference, or, like we didn't have, like we won it in 17-18 and didn't have a single first team all conference player on our entire roster. And yet we had the third and like 7th top scorers in the league and top assist getter, so statistically it just didn't, and we had won the league outright regular season. So it was, so that part can be frustrating when you have really good players and that the system kind of hides how really good they are, like you kind of miss that. Like I had a player, back in 2017 score 52 points in 26 minutes. And to understand, I can't name another player right now that could do that in 26 minutes. I mean, that's really hard to do. That's a ton of, you have to be very efficient. She only had 2 3-pointers in that. So it's like, when you think about how many points that is in a short period of time. So yeah, I think those are the sacrifices that come for, I think, individual players that are very good, but to understand it's about the team and the team concept. And I think that's probably the harder sell in high school sports, is the overall team experience. So
she averaged 2 points a minute.
Yeah, pretty much.
26 times 2. So yeah.
Yep. So, but I think that's the harder sell in high school, right? It's the experience. You're not recruiting. And I do think one mistake, at least that I've seen, is whether it's college or high school coaches, is they go to it when they have no talent.
Yeah.
And then they're surprised when they don't win. So, or surprised that it didn't, quote unquote, work. It doesn't matter what style of play you incorporate. If you don't have the talent, you're going to struggle, especially against good teams. So we've been fortunate to have some really good teams and really good players and have some depth, and then had role players that really improved and got better and kind of embraced being part of this style of play. So I think that understanding that talent, no matter how you play, is still going to win you some games.
What's the biggest criticism you hear
of just playing that way,
or
that I've heard?
Yeah.
At the beginning, we got more criticism than we do now. One of the things this year was tough for us. We played a really, really difficult non-league schedule, and but that comes when you win, and it's harder to get non-league games. So, we were able to have more success once we got into our league play, which was good. So, I mean, I think in terms of criticisms, we haven't gotten a lot since the beginning. That first year was probably the toughest.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we started winning, and then all of a sudden we won that first MASCAC title and we won 4 in a row, we've been pretty lucky. I've been pretty sheltered from a lot of criticism from that.
So I've been doing some more research, and I believe these are the only women's teams in college that run it. Yourself, Westfield State yourself, Gwynedd Mercy, who just started it last year.
Yep.
Olivet Nazarene, who's been the main one over the last 10 years.
Right, but aren't they NAIA too, I think, though?
They're in it. I'm sorry, just college women in general then.
Yep.
And then you got Doug, who's running it at Bethel now, NAIA. Yep. And just talked to Coach Marshall at West Virginia State.
Yep.
And there's another one. Is it Glenville State? Is that the?
Yeah, they're deep. Oh, is it the men's team? No, the women's team? I don't know. I kind of lost track.
I think that's the only ones I can think of on the women's side, unless you know of any other ones in college.
We were kind of alone for a little while. It was kind of just us outside of Olivet Nazarene, but in the NCAA, we were the only ones for a couple years, 2 or 3.
You were the poster child for D3?
Yeah, for a little bit. Okay. WestCon did it for a little while and then stopped. So yeah, it's funny how it ebbs and flows.
Do you feel that this will be the style of play that you do until you retire?
I don't want to do anything different, but I always kind of leave the caveat that if all of a sudden we got a back to the basket stud, I'm calling the triangle out. So I'm not stupid. So, but yeah, I mean, if you got somebody who's really like the Shaquille O'Neal of D3 women's basketball that could, score, have double doubles every game off the block, then I think we would certainly at least modify some stuff. That's for sure.
So over the last 5 years, you've been either first or second in Division III in scoring. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, we won it. We got the scoring record twice, and then I think came in second this year.
Yeah. What type of record have you guys set on the defensive side? Because that's one of the things I think it's a misconception, is that system teams don't play defense. See, to me, is if you're giving up 90, but you're scoring 100, you're plus 10. You still got a 10-point differential. So that'd be 60-50. Like if you're Virginia or whoever.
Right,
So,
right.
so people don't look at it that way. So because one year when I was a hybrid system team, we averaged 70 points a game, but we gave up 58. And everybody's all, you just press, make, miss. You don't play any defense. And I go,
Right.
well, what do you mean? We're plus 12.
Right.
I mean, so you score 50. I'm all, are you giving up 38?
Right.
So
So there's not a real beauty in the, I don't know. I have a harder time watching the 47-42 slugfests.
yeah.
I definitely prefer the 98-92 games or
And in vice versa, losing a game 75 to 50
right.
probably doesn't look as bad as losing 50 to 25.
Right.
And it's the same amount of points. So because you scored more. So how did you come about your offense? Is it just each year you tinker with it, or have you been 5-out now for a while? Or
Yeah, I would say the last couple years we did the 4-out dribble drive and kind of modified some quick hits with that. And then the last like 2 years we've done more of a 5-out kind of dribble drive. But we're trying to score right away on that Loyola Marymount press. So our fifth guard on the floor kind of spaces to the left block and then kind of spaces to the corner. But we also run some ball handling things for that player, whether it's off the pick and roll, and we do some other things like real quick pick and roll action right off the break if we don't get anything right away.
is it based upon anything like read and react, or is it more just dribble
There's
drive?
probably a little read and react. I mean, we definitely do some cutting with it. So if you pass, you have to cut through and you fill spots. So we put tape on the floor, in the 5 spots we want filled. So they know where they're cutting to. They know, they like a corner person cuts in, then has to kind of replace themselves. Like they can't just cut through to the other side because it doesn't really work. So you got to keep the floor balanced. But we run some stuff where we are purposely running people through on a cut to create a double gap to drive through. So we do some things like that, just kind of like quick little calls like that are whether from the bench or off of a made shot by the other team, so that we're a dead ball where we're coming up. So
You're not spending an exorbitant amount of time on 3-on-0 or 4-on-0, 5-on-0 breakdown in the half court, though, are you?
no, we do. That was one thing I did a coaching clinic. I watched a coach, and the name's escaping me right now, but they like when they introduce their stuff, they do everything 5-on-5. They don't do anything really skeleton. And so we started doing that this year, and it saved a ton of time. It just saved a ton of time. Like, when are you ever running anything 5-on-0 ever, or 3-man weave? Like, why are you ever doing a 3-man weave? Nobody ever weaves anywhere. So we just got away from some stuff that we just wasted a lot of time with and just made it more game-like, because we just really need to work, so if we're putting in one of our, say we're putting in one of our baseline out of bounds plays, we show it 5-on-0 right away, and then I throw defense on the floor. Like, we don't spend 5 minutes, okay, let's run it skeleton, 5-0. We try not to spend a lot of time on that stuff. The only time we might do that is at a shoot around when we're doing non-contact and, it's not part of our practice. Like, it's a day, the same day of a game or something, and at 9:00 we're in for a 1:00 game and we're just running through skeleton plays or whatever. But in practice, we're not wasting a lot of time running 5-on-0 stuff.
So when you're installing offense each year, are you doing that pretty traditionally, where you go like the first 5-6 days of just offense?
Yeah, I mean, we do almost all offense, a lot of fast break. The first like 3-4 days, we're just getting pace. Like, this is how fast we're going to run. Like, this year, it's going to be really tough because our senior point guard graduated, and she has been the pace setter for 4 years. So we're going to have 2 young point guards kind of running the show, and they're going to have to figure out the pace of play. How fast and how uncomfortable can they be pushing the ball up the floor, and how fast can they get it up the floor? So, for us, we may have to spend a little more time on pace of play and then worry about the rest of it later.
Sounds like to me I got one senior and a sophomore that are penciled in to do that, and then another one for the third one that's going to be a sophomore as well. So, and a new coach trying to put it in to learn the pace of play himself. So, should be fine. Defensively, do you do them all? do you add more than the traditional four presses that everybody talks about in the book and that
We only
people,
really have one. We have one press.
the on
And
press?
yeah, the on press, but we kind of vary the way the guards might match up to the front. So I guess we kind of modify through the course of a game. Like so if we're 3/4 deny at the front of the press and we're getting beat long, then we kind of play more behind and keep the pressure on. The only kind of real modification is we go from the trap right away. We might go stay press and just kind of stay and but everything kind of stays the same for us. We're trapping the whole way and the press really doesn't change at any place on the floor.
Okay, let's talk roster size. Would you have a roster size recommendation for high school as opposed to, I mean, college probably has a little bit bigger. You got 40 minutes, you got longer season, if you will, potentially, and high school shorter game. Um,
So you mean to play system?
yeah, what do you think would be a good roster size? Would it be 15? Would it be less?
I think in high school, I mean, I guess it depends on your level of fitness of your team.
Okay.
And I think every state's a little different. Like I know in Mass, I don't think they can work with their teams outside of season at all. Um, but I think 12 for high school.
Okay.
Because I feel like 14 is kind of the sweet spot number for us in terms of how many players we can get in with enough minutes,
Yeah.
like to feel like they've contributed. I can get, 16, 17 in a game, but it's hard to
Hmm.
get enough shifts for people because there's always like that one shift that goes long that you're scrambling through, so there's always kind of variables that are happening.
Yeah, I'm think I'm settling on is 13 is probably the sweet number. You got your top 10, and then you got a third string like ball handler, wing, and a post. Like
Yeah.
so, the issues are is the practice. So, um, would you recommend to run it at lower levels if you're running it for the first time, or would you just concentrate on your varsity team and then have your lower levels maybe run the concepts and not necessarily system stuff?
I would definitely focus on the concepts. I don't know that at the younger levels you can press all the time, just because you'd never get the ball really past the hash marks if you did that. Um, but I would think you could play man to man. I think everybody at the younger levels should be playing man to man, and I think there should be pace of play. I think we're seeing leagues out here at the younger levels. They're not allowed to go past. They're not allowed to leave the 3-point area to play defense. So then you end up with all these jacked up 3-point shots by like 10-year-olds that can't even reach.
Yeah, that's
And you're only going to have one kid handling the ball. Like you're getting no passing, you're getting no layups in transition, you're getting no fouls and free throws. Like you're taking away a lot of the game. So, I mean, in terms of pressing at the lower levels, I would say no, but a lot of the speed concepts for sure.
we could go on 30 minutes on how I think the U.S. basketball youth model is broken, but
Oh,
so,
terrible. At the younger levels, especially. I mean, I'm not going to speak to the AAU level, but definitely the younger, the suburban that they call it out here. I mean, I had an argument about why they shouldn't just be sitting in a 2-3 zone the whole game.
right.
They were like 11. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So shifts. Are you a two group or are you a three sets of five? How do you, or is it year by year? How do you determine your shifts?
We've always done two groups. So if we have a team of, 15, say, we have a group of 8, group of 7. So we typically don't have the 3 groups. There are some players that might swing from one group to the other depending on position, but like one group, we have a blue group and a white group. So we
And
don't have 3 groups.
does that kind of stay the same once you put them into their two groups, or do people cross
No,
over quite
no, I
frequently?
mean, we move players around like chemistry wise, like to see who fits with who, especially early in the year when we're playing non-league games. We get a better idea of who kind of fits with what groups, like what might be a great idea early, what that you think might work and doesn't. Then you start moving some pieces around and you're like, oh, that seems to work better. Like if you have one player that would do better with a lot of volume shots versus being in a group that needs to move the ball a little bit more effectively, so you just kind of start to figure it out as you go. And our season's long enough that we can kind of get like a 5-10 game sample size and start to kind of make some adjustments.
Okay. Is there any advice you'd give to coaches installing it for the first time, like other than reading the book and reaching out? I mean, getting psychology help? What I mean, going to see a shrink?
Yeah, right. I would just probably say that um, you have to kind of relinquish control and be okay with mistakes early, because you'll also, as a coach, make mistakes. Um, don't overthink it. Don't overcoach it. I think you have to let the players figure out how to play that fast and constantly encourage speed. Constantly, I mean, you're going to cringe when you see that first horrendous 3-point shot get taken. And I think for coaches who have never done it before, it's hard to see that. And even now, I mean, there's still times I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that ball just got shot. But, encouraging the aggressiveness, but also understanding that there's going to be some, wow, that was pretty bad moments. So figuring out how to positively encourage your group when you want to slow them down, you want to try to get them to be in more control. You got to kind of be comfortable with giving up some control, for sure.
If you can think back to your first year running it, would there be anything you would have done differently now that you've experienced? Like, did you install it, or was it? My thing is I think everybody believes X's and O's with it, and I don't think that's the hardest part. I think it's the mentality is probably going to be the hardest hurdle to overcome. Did you focus more on mentality of it, or did you focus more on X's and O's when you were installing it?
I definitely think I focused more on the mentality of it and less about the X's. I worried less about what offenses we're running. I didn't do a lot of situational stuff when we first started, which is probably why we lost some games early, because we were running it till the bitter end, and whatever happens. And you kind of learn as you go with that. You learn, like, when do you want to go for the win? When does that happen? When's that moment? So we kind of figured out, like, the 3-minute mark, up 7, up 5, like managing the score and kind of playing that mini game with 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 3 minutes to go in a game. This year, I mean, even this year, I found myself doing things I hadn't done before, which was leaving my better players on the floor for double shifts, like trying to score and just trying to stay in games longer. And I just, after those games, really kicking myself that I did that, because it's just against kind of everything that it's against what works, like that for us is tried and true things. Like when you hit a certain minute number, you're not as impactful in the game, and understanding that, there are moments, right, where you can double shift someone, where you can, especially down the stretch of a game or in between quarters, where you can double shift. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some things even this year I'd go back and change, but overall, I think teaching the mentality is really important, and making sure that they understand how hard they have to be willing to play.
So you've ran it for 5 years, and when do you think your program had that aha moment when you thought this was really going to work, and you felt good about it in your program?
It was like I want to say it was like our 5th or 6th game that first year. We had just come off, and I'm trying to remember exactly, we'd just come off a horrible loss. We lost by like 30. My team kind of just packed it in. They were like, this doesn't work. They kind of were pouting their way through just an absolute pummeling. And I called a timeout and said, I'm not stopping. Like, just to be clear, like, you can get on the boat or get off, but I'm not going to stop pressing just because they're shredding us for 1,000,000 points. Like, I don't care. And they saw that I was completely Looney Tunes at that moment. And then, like, it was one of the games shortly after that. We were playing a team that was definitely better than us. That was huge. We had no matchups for them in the post. They had just size upon size upon size. And if we had played them regular, like 10 out of 10 times, they probably beat us. And then all of a sudden we win this game, like, I don't know, 92-87. The crowd was going bananas. The parents were like out of their minds because it was just such an exciting game. And that night, one of my best player texted me. She's like, I get it. I get it. I get what you're trying to do. And once I got her kind of on board, everything else kind of fell into place. Like once I got my best player willing to play half the game, everything came after that.
Well, one of the misconceptions I've seen is that system coaches just kind of sit and they just watch it happen and enjoy the ride. I've watched some of your games, Coach, and you remind me of me, and that's probably how I'm going to be. You're a pacer. You bring the energy for your program, and you're fist pumping. You're doing all the things like if they take a charge. You're animated. Do you ever see yourself just being that Coach A at the end of the bench, like where you know what I'm talking about, where he just sits in the corner and just watches the game? You're fired up out there, so
like I find running out on the floor and chest bumping your group like way more fun. So I definitely couldn't be. Yeah, that's just so. I'm Irish Italian. I can't be that calm ever. So there's no way I could just sit there and yeah, there's just no way.
I saw you laughing and smiling as soon as I started saying what I was saying. He's going that I'm a pacer, or I'm a, you know, I don't want to say you're Looney Toony on the sideline, but you're into it. So
Yeah,
but
I still
your
yell
kids
at
play
that.
off of it. Your kids probably play off your energy. So what adjustments have you feel you've had to make over the last 5 years? Are people defending you different, or are they just doing new things?
Um, I don't know. Everybody kind of gives you something different. It's kind of fun to kind of see like you in league you get a sense of what everybody's doing because everybody kind of has their approach now that we've kind of played our league team so many times. But like out of league, like when we played Amherst in Vegas, was it 18-19 season? I'm starting to lose track of my years since Corona. But in the 18-19 season, we were in Vegas, and I thought for sure that Amherst was going to slow the game down. Like I was like, I would have bet $1 million on it. I would have gone to the casino and bet it because I was like, there's no way they're going to play fast pace with us. They play a great defensive game. Like they hold teams to 37 points a game. There's no way they're going to run up and down with us. And halfway through the first quarter, I was like, oh my God, they're running with us. This is going to be so fun. And they had a kid, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was Hannah Fox. I might get the name wrong, but she just lit us up for like 38 points. It was one of the most amazing displays of basketball I'd seen. And we hung with them for a long time. And one of my kids had like a huge game. She was in the 30s. It was just so fun. And I remember thinking, man, it's so much more fun when teams want to run with you. You know, whether even when you lose, I was like, this was so fun. I was like, I never want to go back.
So you're gonna schedule a game with Keith?
Yeah, we, I don't know that my stat guy would be willing to stat the game. So I don't know, you know, like I think that would be a big ask. Like we would probably have to bring both stat guys there and stat the game. Like they would stat just their team, we would stat just our team, and then would have to combine it together. I don't even know how you'd do that. I don't even know how that would work.
Because if Coach Pruitt had a way to get on here, he does it on all the Zoom clinics. He's always asking people for games too. He's out here in Laverne by me,
Yeah.
And he's always asking.
We'll come out. If they want to pay for our flight, we'll come out playing.
I'll let him know. So, where do you think what's next for you in the system? How much do you see it growing? How high do you think you can get points per game? Do you think you can get to 110?
My goal is over 100 average.
Okay, you haven't done that yet.
No, not an average of over 100. We've hit over 100 a bunch, but like we play a tough non-league schedule, so we have some games where we really struggle to get over 70 against really good teams. So we've and then we have other games where the team runs with us really well, and sorry, my dog started to bark.
It's okay.
We get the game going really fast, and we can get some points on the board. Both teams, we'll have like that 110-100 game, but it's really hard when teams slow you down that are really talented to get over that 60, 70, 80 point mark. So, but yeah, if I can average over 100, I'd be psyched. That's my kind of next goal.
See, I would consider you a system team because of the subbing and your goals. But you do your practices a little different than what I've learned over the last 3 months. They usually pick a theme day and they do that. And can you share with us a little bit of what your thought process of how your practice came about? Because you do it a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I just started modifying kind of my original practices. I went by the book, the system book, and read kind of how they ran their practices and how they introduced. And so there are some changes than your typical normal practice. Like the first week we spend on offense, and then we start to kind of work in the defense after that. But we don't do just like, oh, we're just going to work on our break today, or we're just going to work on our half court sets, or we're just going to work on our defense today. We kind of mix it up every day, running the same stuff. And depending on where we are in the week, like if we're the day before a game, we don't spend 45 minutes on fast break stuff and pressing full court. Then we're doing more half court stuff just because it's the day before a game, but we still touch on all those other things. So we definitely don't have those theme days. So we keep it, where we have our practices broken up, and we're getting plenty of shooting in throughout the course of practice. We're getting our offensive work, our defensive work, our half court stuff, but we're touching on all of that every day.
Are you pumping the music?
Oh yeah. Until I lose my voice, which is usually about the second weekend, then I gotta start turning it down.
Okay. So you let your kids pick the playlist. How do you do that?
Well, we have very strict swearing rules in our building. So,
sure.
We'll do different, like they can pay, I don't care what they play. I really don't care. So, but like, it'll usually come from my phone. So I'm like, I don't care what you get on here, but just like, let's play something, let's get something going. So usually we had a couple different playlists we used this year that we kind of bounced around from. So they just tell me what's popular, and I'm just like, all right, whatever, I'll just play that. So.
Typing it in through your audio, or are you guys using up like a portable speaker?
It depends. If we're sharing the gym, so we have our own court, but you put curtains down. Okay. If we have the whole field house for ourselves, I'll put it in through the speakers. But if it's just us, I'll do it on a little portable speaker.
Okay. I'll have to get that info for you, because I told the kids that we're going to be pumping music, and I'll probably be on Amazon here shortly and buying a portable, because the little like Bluetooth one probably isn't going to be loud enough.
No.
So yeah, I joke with my guys. I've already had some meetings with them, some Zooms and they know we're putting it in, and I said, we're going to still do some competition stuff, so I'm going to let whoever wins the competition pick the playlist for the next practice.
Yeah.
But the other one I told knows, but if coach thinks practice is crap, coach gets to pick the playlist for the next practice.
Yeah.
So don't have a crap practice if you don't want to hear country. Yeah. So because that's probably what I'm playing. So so we hit on practices. When do you feel would be the time frame in your first year running it where a coach and even the players would probably start feeling, this is going to work, or this isn't going to work, or however? When does it start going? I mean, it's not an instant thing. I know that. I've heard you need games underneath your belt. I've heard for you guys, it's Christmas time. For us, that would be right before league. So that would be 15 games, 10 games.
I feel like for us, it's 10 or 12, somewhere in there, for our freshmen to kind of really figure it out. Okay. Definitely 10 or 12 games for sure.
Do you ever think you shoot enough or don't shoot enough in practice?
There are days I feel like we don't get enough shots up, for sure. Like there's days I'm frustrated where it takes us too long to get through something, and But I try to never throw shooting out. Like I try to make sure that's always in. Because it does make a difference. The constant repetition adds up. And I think it's important to add real game-like situational shooting drills, whether it's constant contests and, because a lot of people can shoot a pretty high percentage just standing there and catching it and shooting it. Yeah. So adding different angles that they got to catch the ball from, stuff like that. So.
Are you an hour and a half, 2 hours, or are you shorter than that?
If I got a lot of new players, we're about 2 hours. And I never go longer than 2.
Do you decrease it as the season goes along, or?
Yeah, it usually decreases as the season goes along, but I typically will still use that last 30 minutes to do shooting. So if we're an hour and a half, it's the last 30 minutes of shooting or some sort of competitive shooting drills. Things that don't require any thought is the last 30 minutes.
Do you recall what's the most points you guys ever scored in the game?
I think it's 126.
126, so that's the.
But we've been in some blowouts where, like, we've stopped.
Okay.
So like you hit we had a game once where we scored 41 in the first half. It was 41-11.
Yeah.
And was kind of stunned that that's what happened. So that was a game that could have gotten ridiculously out of hand, but we didn't do that. We made sure it wasn't ridiculously out of hand.
Yeah. What's the biggest comeback you've ever had, if you recall?
Oh, we had a great one against Brandeis in their tournament. We were down, I think, I'd have to look, but it was a few years ago now, but we were down maybe 18 going into the fourth quarter.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I rewatched that recently. So I think it was we were down all the way by, I think, 20 at one point in the game, and we came all the way back and won it.
Most threes you guys have hit in here?
Most threes, I think, is 18.
Okay.
Might be 18, I think.
So here's the tougher one, steals.
Oh, I think we've had the 30s a couple times. I think
Wow.
We've gotten 31. We had 31 this past year.
Do you think
we had 31 and lost?
Wow. Do you think that there's any system goal more important than the other one? Is there any one that you found that correlates into winning the game more than any others for you guys?
Steals, definitely.
Steals? Okay.
If we get over 20 live balls, you're getting those live ball turnovers. So if you get over 20 steals, that usually correlates to wins. Because you're getting the pace you need, getting enough shots, you're getting that shot differential because you're stealing the ball so much. You're going to hit that 35 forced turnover mark, and if 20 of those are steals, you're in really good shape.
How good do you think you guys could be this season? Hopefully that we have the season. Where does the outlook look for Westfield next year?
Return our leading scorer, who she led the league in scoring. She's gonna have an amazing senior year. We have a great core group of players coming back that have now done it, and freshmen really grew, sophomores really grew this year, getting a ton of experience. And then I think we have a really good recruiting class. So I'm excited. I think I think we can be good, but it remains to be seen. We definitely have some talent, so I'm curious to see how we do.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to wish you guys good luck. Stay healthy, stay safe. Hopefully you get to have the season this year, and look forward to seeing you hopefully average over 100 this year.
I hope so. Thanks so much, Coach.
All righty.
We'll see you.
All right. Okay, that was Andrea Bertini from Westfield State. I'm Mark Hart with SystemBasketball.com. Thank you for joining us on this edition of System Basketball ZoomCast.